And welcome to the program. Joining me now, Representative Vivian Flowers, Democrat of Pine Bluff, Bill Vickery of Capital Advisors Group, GOP strategist. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you. Good morning.
Nothing happening in politics these days, so you know,
quiet.
just a nice quiet weekend. Nothing else happening right there. Let's talk presidential politics today. Vivian, I start with you. Where does this race stand today? Is it Kamala Harris's to lose, Donald Trump's to lose, or a toss-up?
I think, I know what I think, but I think it's too early for anyone to really say. What we know for sure is that there has been a huge change in the tide. And obviously, given the record-breaking level of support, whether you're talking about contributions, volunteerism, or just the number of groups that have come out in support, you know, Vice President Harris clearly has the advantage. And I think that, you know, coming out of the gate and getting President Biden's endorsement, and really every Democratic leader's endorsement, getting the number of delegates she needs well before the convention, and also having some pretty hot commercials prior to the convention, I think bespeaks where we could be in the coming weeks. And she hasn't even announced her vice presidential running mate, so I think that
next week.
Her momentum is electric.
Bill Vickery, I'm sure you completely agree with Vivian on that it's Kamala Harris is to lose. No, I'm kidding. Donald Trump's to lose, Kamala Harris is to use, toss-up.
Well, with respect to my friend here, who I like a great deal, look, the party bosses picked her. They put her in place. This is a return back. The Democratic Party is a return back to the 1940s and 30s when party bosses just pick nominees, because that's what's happened. I mean, you can't deny that. You got.
I can, but go ahead and finish.
She didn't win a primary. She has yet to receive a primary vote for the presidency, and now she's the Democratic nominee. She didn't receive one in 20, and she didn't receive one now. So, party bosses picked her. There is no doubt that she is riding a wave of great support. There is an enthusiasm inside the Democratic Party that didn't exist when Sleepy Joe didn't really know what was going on, and there was this impending sense of doom and how bad could it be. I think that all changes and ends. She's got to pick somebody to be her VP. And let's be blunt here. This is a presidential race that's going to boil down to about 4 or 5 states in the industrial Midwest.
I agree.
And right now, I think President Trump is running ahead in most of those states. Most importantly, Pennsylvania, where he has a wider lead than anywhere else. And so she's got to pick a VP. Then all the shoes start to drop after that. So we'll see where things are in 2 weeks, and really after Labor Day when the campaign begins in earnest.
I'll give you a chance to respond, but I also want you to tell me, what is Kamala Harris's appeal to Democrats?
Well, first, in response, I think that's rich. I think the last time we talked about this, there was a prediction of chaos at a time when it was Republicans who first started talking about, you know, suggesting that President Biden leave the race. And, you know, there's a process. And I think to say that party bosses picked her when we have a delegate process, delegates came out immediately in support of, and again, we will have a convention. It's other Democrats who've decided they don't want to run against her. So, you know,
real quick, if Republicans had, if Donald Trump had dropped off, the Republicans would use the same mechanism to pick a new presidential
Go ahead
candidate.
and just say yes.
The difference is that he ran and won a primary that was contested by about 15 people.
But if he had left. So.
But I mean, if Martians come down, I mean, the
but
idea
Martians
here.
didn't come down, come on.
What's Kamala Harris's appeal to Democrats?
Kamala Harris's appeal is, number one, she's more experienced than everyone running in total. Whether you talk about her prosecutorial role, AG role, and serving as vice president, it is uncontested, it is undeniable that she has had leadership experience in elected roles and positions. And the fact that she has taken positions, whether out in the forefront or behind the scenes, that have been beneficial for people, so much so that in California she was reelected. And we see right now here today that the support that Democrats have for her, I mean, it's uncontested.
What's Donald Trump's appeal at this point to the Republicans and to the general electorate?
I think he's transforming the Republican Party. He's putting together the old
He's been at it for 9 years, man.
The idea
it's transformed.
Is that you've got a bunch of working class folks who the Democratic Party has abandoned, and now they've come home inside the Republican Party, and that's why you saw the convention that you saw. Look, the major issues still remain the major issues, and that's inflation, that's the southern border. These are all things that permeate down through the industrial Midwest where the election will be won or lost. And so Trump's appeal is that he will do something about those issues that affect everyday working Americans' lives, as opposed to worrying about the weather or transgender issues or things that seem to be on the forefront of the National Democratic Party.
I'm going to need to respond to that and
Go
say
ahead.
that all of these distractions, I mean, that is the Trump playbook 101, and I think that we have had enough experience in the chaos of it all to recognize it, and we're not going to be able to do that anymore. And I think that in this campaign, it will be Vice President Harris that speaks to issues, that speaks to the bread and butter issues of this country. And whether you're talking about inflation and how really the inflation that people keep talking about is a masquerade for what really is price gouging at a time where the companies who are raising their prices are also seeing record profits. But I can't wait to talk about those issues. Yeah. And then whether you talk about immigration and the fact that that is something that in the term that he was able to serve, Donald Trump promised to address that, and instead he left it to Congress. And even when President Biden effectively, and even it's the case, it didn't get passed. It didn't get passed. And when President Biden and Vice President Harris supported what was going to be a bipartisan legislation to make the changes that American people have wanted to see for decades through numerous presidential administrations, it was Donald Trump who threatened his party leaders on the Republican side from buying into and voting for that law, and that is why we have the problem we have now.
I got to give Bill a chance to respond.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Look,
he really can't, but go ahead and try.
Last 4 years have been an utter disaster. You've got a spectacular disaster at the southern border. The vice president was charged with two things, and I don't care if you call her the border czar or however they want to remake it. There's 25 articles from the Washington Post to the Associated Press. Politico even called her the border czar in a 2021 article. So she was in charge of NASA and the southern border. And we got two people stuck up on a space station that we can't get home, and you got millions of illegal immigrants streaming across the southern border. We've all seen it, we all know it, we all know what it looks like. So she's 0 for 2. And this idea somehow that the last 4 years have been good and inflation doesn't exist, if you take a shower after work as opposed to before work, life's not good for you, my friend. You've been abandoned by the Democratic Party, and you have been abandoned by an administration that's worried more about these other things as opposed to the real meat and potatoes issues, which eggs cost more, bread costs more, but you're not getting paid more. So that's the reality of the Biden-Harris administration. She owns a lot of that. And so let's talk about how difficult it is for working families in the very middle of the middle class in this country.
I got 2 minutes left to talk on air. I can already tell that we're going web extra here for this one. But very quickly, VP selection coming up for Kamala Harris. Who do you think she picks? Who do you want to see her pick? Vivian.
I would like to see her pick the governor from Kentucky.
Andy Beshear.
For a lot of reasons. And I think that coming back to the South and not foregoing the South will be important to this campaign. I think that we will see Vice President Harris, but I'll say this. I mean, it doesn't matter what I like or what anyone else likes. The bottom line is there are a whole lot of people who are interested and would love to serve as her VP. And at the end of the day, she's going to pick somebody who is vetted, who is strong, who has a leadership background, and it really won't matter.
60 seconds. Was Vance the right pick for VP?
Yes, he is tremendous cross appeal throughout the industrial Midwest, which is the key to the election. He also is somebody whose story is very quintessentially American, and we've all seen it. Literally, a movie was made about his upbringing. So, agree with that. The problem for Harris is, whenever she picks somebody, then other dominoes fall in other states. And so she picks the governor of Pennsylvania, that doesn't help her in Michigan. She picks the governor of Minnesota, that doesn't help her in Pennsylvania. So she's in a box. That's why I say, and oh, by the way, we got to do this before August the 7th, because when the Democrats actually have their convention, they will have already nominated their nominees. So it's a fake convention to begin with.
Oh, a fake convention. We're going to pick this up off air, we're going to go do a web
air,
extra.
okay.
You can find it at talkbusiness.net. We're going to do a little extra block here when we get done. Bill Vickery, Vivian Flowers, thank you both for being here. Stick around. We're going to talk some more. Welcome back to the program, our web extra. I got Representative Vivian Flowers, Democrat of Pine Bluff, Bill Vickery of Capital Advisors Group, Republican strategist. All right, we ran out of time on air. I knew we would. I didn't even think that we'd have a chance. The issue of race has come up this past week. Former President Donald Trump speaking to the National Association of Black Journalists. The whole thing really went off the rails, quite frankly. I mean, it was hard to watch, to be honest with you. But basically, Trump has questioned the racial identity of Kamala Harris. Is she Indian or is she black? Which kids that I know in this day and age are like, why is this an issue? But at the same time, it was an issue. Bill, I'm gonna give you a chance to defend the president's appearance.
Be careful.
At NABJ. So.
Listen, I'll navigate this minefield. No, look, I think the issue of race is very difficult to discuss in this country because it has been weaponized by people of all stripes, some to make money, some to try to depress others. I mean, we have not dealt with it as an issue in this country well at all. And that's unfortunate, and it's still a stain on this country. That said, the Vice President has very clearly put forward race and gender as two issues that she's helping to define her support by. And so that then begs the question to get into these things. Now, the former president may have been inarticulate in what he said, but because that's such a key element to the campaign, it's very fair to then call into question what's going on and what surrounds this. And given the minuscule amount of facts that are known about the current vice president's past. Listen, raised by a single mom who, by the way, Indian and a microbiologist. I mean, a brilliant woman, but very left-leaning. Her father was a economic
microbiologist left-leaning. I didn't realize that.
Her father was Jamaican and a economics professor at Stanford for many decades, and so again, very sort of left-leaning and known for that. But you have to admit, I mean, two powerful people.
Yeah.
But what does that mean in terms of identity? And I think that's what the president was trying to get to.
All right, Vivian.
The president, Donald Trump has been very consistent in throwing out bombs to distract. And I'll speak to this because you asked the question, and I think that Bill very artfully and carefully put it well about race in America, but that conversation was not about race in America. That was simply Donald Trump very offensively questioning how Vice President Harris identifies herself. And, and he lied while he did it. So I'll say very clearly, Vice President Harris has consistently and always identified as an African-American woman with an Indian background and an Indian heritage, because obviously her mother is Indian. But she grew up in Oakland as a black girl. She attended Howard University and HBCU, the Mecca, as a black woman. She pledged an African-American, historically African-American sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. It is undeniable, and I'm gonna keep using that word, it's undeniable that she identifies as an African-American woman. And that doesn't mean that she can't identify as an Indian woman, because she is a woman. Yeah. And so to say, with all of this as a whole conversation on the news in Arkansas, she was speaking at the National Black, he was speaking at the NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists. And I believe that she did a Zoom as well. The bottom line is, Donald Trump has a history of throwing out these bombs, and then strategists like my friend here do a very artful, articulate job of giving explanation and giving excuses, and it's always said, well, he didn't really mean that. Well, what he meant to say He is as a college-educated man who's been on TV. It's marketing.
Yeah.
And instead of on that stage talking about poverty, talking about manufacturing jobs that the Biden administration has brought here, talking about how the vice president has addressed immigration as an issue from its source and has seen double-digit decreases in immigration from several South American countries, or talking about how the Biden administration has brought 3 prisoners home from Russia.
Right.
We were sitting here talking about what Donald Trump meant when he insulted these black women on stage and insulted the vice president.
Do you think it was calculated that this was do you think this was a slip of the tongue, or do you think this was he went there with the intention of creating this controversy? And I ask that honestly because it has diverted the conversation from some of the things that Vivian mentioned.
I do think that the former president is very purposeful in a lot of what he does. I also think that he is the same person out in front as he is behind closed doors. I think what you see of Donald Trump at that meeting is the same Donald Trump you see in a strategy meeting. So I do think that it probably wasn't as random as we would think it would be. That said,
that's a yes.
It is, correct. So that said, why?
Yeah.
It's because you've got to look at the path to victory for Democrats is they have to perform or overperform in the African American communities in the industrial Midwest.
Right.
And so that's why you see race and gender put forward by the vice president's
I think
campaign.
you will see that also happen in Georgia. I think you'll see it happen in North
Across the
Carolina,
country.
Virginia. I
Yeah.
think you'll see it happen
Because
in
Democrats-
Arizona and Nevada too in terms of swing states. I'm not saying it won't
Yeah.
happen in other states. I'm just saying in the competitive states, I think you'll see a push for Democrats
But
to
why do we speak
overperform.
as if there has to be some sort of performance or appeal, and it's not black people listening intently about the issues and voting based upon their best interests? So whether you're talking about
I'm for
black
you on that.
people coming out of enslavement and listening to the then Republican Party, which is much like the Democratic Party now in terms of issues, the then Republican Party making certain promises about Reconstruction, making certain promises about wages, making certain promises about ability to serve in the military, et cetera. Black people supported the Republican Party then because the Republican Party made promises and expressed positions on issues that were beneficial to the freedom
Right.
and equity of black people.
I gotcha.
And then, of course, we saw a switch during
Civil rights
the
movement.
Roosevelt,
Right.
well, really
Okay,
starting with
okay,
the
I'm with
Roosevelt
you.
administration,
Yeah.
where it was then that you saw some of those same issues being supported and propagated by both the First Lady and the President. And then, of course, when you get to the murder of Emmett Till and Democratic and Republican leaders having to take a position on certain issues, people did say, hey, this is what we support, come here, and Democrats ended up doing it better. They created the big tent that created a middle class, created a manufacturing and supported a manufacturing economy that enabled most people to thrive and survive.
We could sit here all day, but I give you the final word. How about
Listen, no, I do. I agree with Vivian in this. As at a time when we do see the country divided so greatly, it would be nice instead of as I did talk about groups as voting blocks and activating these groups and do that. Have everyone just assess on their own. Are they better off today than they were 4 years ago? And make your decision based on your own story and your own issue, and not as part of a group. So
There you go. Hey, if I was a Republican, I could make some arguments that I'm not better off than I was 4 years ago. If I was a Democrat, I could make some arguments that I am better off than
But
I
don't
was
make
4
an
years
argument
ago.
as a part of a group that you're defined as in this country, but okay.
true, but then I'd like to see the vice president not run a campaign designed to appeal to groups.
Well,
only
maybe
relative to that.
when Donald Trump doesn't run a campaign designed to scare white men into thinking that everything is going to go to black folks or everything's going to be about race and gender, then maybe we can get there. But you can't say that don't do that, Democrats, when the Republicans have created an entire platform on attacking different groups, whether you're talking about women or LGBT community or immigrants. And the thing is, and I know we're trying to go, but I have to say this. What we are going to see in this campaign is going to be about issues. It will not be a continuation of lies and sound bites, and people will remember the chaos of the Trump administration. He threw out some tidbits for people to hang on to and think that they would do better economically. But you know what? We are seeing the effects still as a result of his mishandling of COVID, still. And they want to put that on this administration. We have record-breaking economic indicators, and nobody's talking about that. Everyone wants to talk about one dynamic and steer away from the backlash and the effect of the man who said, let's see if we can let people put bleach in their bodies to affect COVID. We're not going to forget that.
Whatever you say, when we finish, y'all are hugging. All right,
Oh,
so let's
no,
go.
No, don't, I do not.
We are.
Don't mistake a good back and forth.
Absolutely.
And the reason we can have this back and forth is we know each other well,
Yeah.
respect each other, and we're
That's why I
friends.
invited y'all
So,
here today.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Listen, I hope it is about the issues. I think we win. And so we'll see going forward. But.
All right.
And when they don't, we'll still be friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Bill Vickery and Vivian Flowers, thank y'all both for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for watching.